Hi, happy August. I want to offer a quick 10-minute stretch, post-cycle stretch, which actually might really work well after sitting for a long time too. So I'm going to focus on three things mainly after cycling is spinal extension, so kind of a back bend, twisting, and then opening up your hip flexors. So there are a lot of different exercises you could choose for this. I'm going to suggest that especially after cycling or sitting in a chair for a while, you start on your belly. It's called Sphinx. It is spinal extension. So once you press down into your hips and reach your legs nice and long behind, it's a nice supported back bend, typically pretty safe for everyone. So I suggest holding for probably 5 to 8 really deep breaths. I'm less about counting or time versus the quality of breath. So if you press your hips down and reach your legs long, pay attention to feeling that your heels point straight up so your ankles aren't sickled, which usually internally or externally rotates your legs. So you want your legs to be neutral, hips pressing down, elbows under your shoulders, typically forearms parallel, and you're kind of pressing the floor away. So avoid sinking, right? And pull. You give a gentle sort of isometric pull here to draw your chest forward. Obviously, you don't want to feel any pinching in your low back. If that's the case, move your elbows a little forward. Back bending, spinal extension, so healthy for most people's lumbar spine. Just pay attention and breathe deeply. Now, after cycling, it feels really good to retract your head, because usually in cycling, you're looking up the whole time to pay attention, to the road and obstacles, pedestrians. But to draw your chin in and lengthen the back of your neck feels so good. And after about 5 to maybe 10 full breaths there, and I would hold it, I'm going to suggest to come down into a Twisted Locust. So if you turn your head to the right, let your left ear rest on the floor, which feels really great after cycling because that is cervical rotation. And spread your arms wide in T. Open your legs probably about, as wide as your body. So if you're looking to the right, do a hip extension first. Again, a really healthy thing after sitting in a chair for too long or, a long bike ride. So this hip extension moves the thigh behind your hip. It's literally extending the hip. And it, activates your glutes, right? I would move in and out of that a few times, again, breathing deeply. And then once you lift and, 5 or 6 lifts, hold the leg lifted, use your back muscles to lift your hips and roll and reach. This feels so good. Reach your right leg way out on a high diagonal away from your right fingers. So keep shoulders on the floor and the leg is straight, right? So this nice long sort of spiraling action through your spine. Sometimes feels really good to circle your ankle around while it's up there. And then come on back to center. Again, 5 to maybe 10 breaths at the most to hold that. And then of course on the other side. So if you turn your head to the left, let your right ear relax to the ground. Do a few hip extensions on the left. And when you do lift your leg, it's a good idea to keep the leg straight and keep your hips pressing down. So I'm trying not to, do this from my back. I'm doing it more from glute. And then lift the leg and hold. Use now your back muscles to lift your hip and roll and reach on a really high diagonal. So stretching the leg as far, or my foot, as far away from my hand as I can. And again, a few ankle circles feels really good there. Deep breath. A little ankle pop. And come on back to center, lower, and then bring your hands under your shoulders and press up into table. Now after back bending, it's a good idea to do twisting. So I'm going to suggest on knees and feet together. So that's a slight outward rotation of your thighs, which is kind of helpful, after being in the sagittal plane for so long. Bringing your thumbs toward each other under your chest, open, one arm up into a twist, and then alternate sides. Now, as you do this, stand evenly out of both knees. So I'm trying not to move my hips. If I press down evenly into both of my knees, I'm more likely to keep my hips still and feel the rotation in my ribs. And then hold this for maybe 5 breaths, right? So and press down pretty strong with the hand that's on the floor. Reach the hand that's in the air. You can circle that wrist around while you're breathing deeply. Also feels really good to let your head kind of relax toward the floor. So that's lateral flexion in your neck. And then of course hold that for a few breaths on the other side, pressing into your right hand, open the left arm, and circle your wrist around. Again, press down pretty strong and stand even out of both knees. One more deep breath there. Nice. And then come on back to center. So a hip flexor stretch. In that spinal extension, got some rotation. We're going to come up tall into kneeling and step one foot forward. I like to move in and out of it a couple of times. This is actually a great kind of coordination and balance challenge to alternate your knees. So stepping, 1 foot at a time. It's hard to step both feet out there, but 1 foot at a time forward. And it's okay if your knee goes, beyond your toes, especially in this position. It's a nice ankle, and that's dorsiflexion of the ankle. So it lengthens through your Achilles and your calf. And then hold, one knee forward, and you can sink in and out of it a few times. And that is a lovely hip flexor stretch. Keep your, shoulders relaxed. Again, breath deep. We have several videos on our channel about the importance of breathing, so critical. So then I may hold for just a few, 3 to 5 breaths maybe, letting your hips sink low. Helps to also increase the length in that deep front line to lift your arm up, and you could even do a few circles here. You could have, a little side bend, which feels really lovely. And then come on back up and switch legs. So the other foot out in front, stationary now, and moving in and out a few times. So as you sink, make sure that your knee tracks over your middle toes, and it's letting your hips sink between your thighs. One leg is in hip flexion, the other leg is in hip extension. And then when you sink low, you can hold and take that same arm up in the air, whatever leg is behind. If you want to circle the arm around, that's a great idea. Get some shoulder mobility. You could add a little bit more of the back bend in here, or a side bend, which feels amazing. Let's take one more deep breath. And then come on up. So I'm going to finish with kind of a deep hip stretch. If you come in onto your back, and again, there's a lot of stretches you could do, but I'm just going to suggest these today for a quick finisher for your ride. Crossing legs tight, right? So right thigh over the left thigh. If you let your heels drop down, that's perfect. You can pull your knees in close to your belly. So that's external rotation in both thighs. It's usually a really nice hip stretch. If you walk your hands down to your shins, lift your feet, and you can use your shins as like a pry bar basically to continue to pry your thighs a little wider apart. This is some deep rotator muscles in your hips and glutes. Now, tendency is to round your spine. I really encourage you to keep your tailbone flat, or your tailbone anchored, let's say, so that your low back has a natural curve in it. Try not to squash that. And then, of course, switching sides. So left leg over the right. Again, 5 to 8 breaths is usually a really good finisher, especially if you're a little short on time. You can rock here a little. Hug your uppermost inner thighs. It's usually pretty easy to catch the knees. Most, assuming you have, depends on limb length and how mobile your hips, your knees are, but that's fine to start. If it works, and you can grab your ankles or your shins or even the outer edges of your feet and lift your feet a little bit. I think you're going to feel a big difference when your feet start to rise. Remember, keep your tailbone down. You could roll your head side to side here. All of it with a really deep breath. Well, it's kind of a quick down and dirty. A little spinal extension, hip flexor stretch, and some deep twisting and maybe a little deep hips going on there. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's helpful, and thanks for watching.